Good. Okay, so what have we got? We've got den, 10, den, yeah, den just with one N. 10 net. Fantastic. Good. Vicky, I'm seriously impressed with what you just put. Vicky has just put the 9-letter word down. I thought I had made that much more difficult than apparently it was. That's great. So what have we got? T8, Dean, net, eat, clap, clap, Vicky. Yes, exactly. Well done. That's really, really good. Okay. All right. Well, as we've already got the 9-letter word, let's move on. I think, according to a website I was looking at earlier on today, you could apparently make about 160 words in English with these ones. I don't know all of them, obviously, but yeah, that's the idea. Be a Delta One candidate in 2019. So let's have a look at how that can work and how one can do that. Now, the reason why I wanted to play a little game with everybody before we started was for this reason. The effective filter. As I'm sure you all know, was talked about by Stephen Krashen. This probably isn't going to be a particularly easy question to answer here and now, but what is the effective filter? What's your understanding of Stephen Krashen's effective filter? Please feel free to put something in the chat box about that. I'm sure you've heard of it before. If not, it's not a problem, obviously. I see Juan is busily typing something now. Right, let's see. So, something that causes problems when communicating, especially in a foreign language. Yeah, definitely. Emotions, Vicky. Stopping learning from happening. Yeah, good. Emotional and other problems. Good. I think those are all really good definitions, actually. Stephen Krashen says that, yeah, it's a combination of things. So, low anxiety, high motivation, and high self esteem lead to better second language development because of the presence of an effective filter, which, when raised, blocks language from entering an individual's language acquisition. This certainly happens with me all the time when I'm speaking in Spanish. I can guarantee that. I feel very nervous, especially if I've got a formal meeting, and yeah, it stops both my reception and production, unfortunately. Um, so that's one of the many things, obviously, that we'll be looking on the course. So to start with, in terms of the input from this session itself, it's three different things what we're going to be talking about. What Delta means to teaching professionals, what it means to me, and what it means to you. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, I want to ask you some questions about the Delta. I've got 4 questions for you here. Let's focus on number one, obviously, first of all. Does anyone know what delta means? Oh, I've spelt that wrong. Look at that. What? No, I didn't. What does delta mean? What does the because it used to be an acronym, delta. Because there's while you're having a think about that, I'll tell you that there's another Cambridge teaching qualification that you might have heard of called the CELTA, CELTA, which stands for Certificate for English Language Teaching to Adults. Delta, Delta is something very, very similar, and actually it's a bit of a trick question, as you're going to see in a second. I'm going to wait for Juan to finish typing there. But yeah, like I say, it is, or at least it used to be, Delta, the word Delta, an acronym. Right, let's see. Vicky and Juan, you did that exactly the same time. Oh, Juan, yes. Diploma in English language teacher. You're both right. You're both absolutely right, guys. It did used to mean that. Now, they've now just changed it, and Delta just is a word, Delta. But it doesn't specifically focus on adults. It can also focus on younger learners as well. And on the course, we'll see why that is. So, okay, so that's question number one. Good start. How many parts to the delta are there in total? This is delta one. what we're going to be talking about today. 3, correct. Yeah, there's module 1, module 2, module 3. We'll be talking about all of those in a second. And so, well, this leads naturally on to question number 3. What is delta 1? Now, Juan, you've got a head start on this because Juan, Vicky, and Natalia started the course with me back in 2016. So Juan already knows what delta 1 is. But that doesn't preclude you from answering the question, Juan, nonetheless. Don't remember so well now. All right. Well, either Vicky or Natalia, do you know anything about Delta Module 1? If the answer is no, of course that's fine because that's what we're here for. But if you do, tell us what you know. No idea. It's okay. I love your honesty. That's great. Natalia, I really want to ask, why did you decide to write your name as BA here? I'm intrigued, given that your name is Natalia. BA is typing. Okay. I have no idea how to change that. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Your name is now BA. Okay. All right. So look, we're going to be talking about Delta One now, but very, very briefly, it's the first module. It's I would say the foundation module. Arguably, in some ways, I wouldn't say the most important, but in my opinion, it probably is because it's the foundation for me for the rest of the course. Cambridge came up with the idea in 2009 of changing the whole of the Delta. It was just one big course, and they'd split it into 3 modules. The idea is that you could do all 3 modules separately, in whichever order. But in my firm conviction, one should start with module 1. Vicky, that's interesting. You've just finished CELT S. Right. Well, in that case, definitely this would be the next step, the correct next step. So it's an exam-based course, and we'll be having a look at that in a second. It will be, I was going to say 6 months of input. It's more than that because it's going to be starting at the beginning of April with a view to you guys sitting the exam at the beginning of December. All right, that's very, very briefly, I realize, but what Delta One is, but we're going to be talking about that obviously in more detail now. I'm just going to read what what Natalia's put here. Joining a teacher training course as a teacher, I need to right. Well, this is absolutely perfect for you in that case. In fact, funnily enough, Vicky and Natalia, you've kind of answered question number 4 here. Who is Delta for? Delta 1 would definitely be for you guys in that case. It really is about, as you've probably seen. Actually, Vicky, I don't know if you've had the information from International House about what Delta One is, but it really is for people who are you wanting to take their career in teaching one step further. In fact, last year I spoke to one of the candidates from my 2017 course. I was in Montevideo in August for a conference, Florencia Perez, and she told me that Module 1 was the reason why she got the coordination job that she's now got at a school in Montevideo. Natalia, you've changed your name. Good, well done. All right, so that's really who Delta 1 is for as well. It's for teachers with, a couple of years experience, enthusiastic teachers who want to take it a step further in their career. Not just for teachers, but for coordinators as well. Delta, it's kind of a different qualification to I'm going to say like Uruguayan and Argentine qualifications, it being internationally recognized, the Cambridge Delta. All right, so let's move on because I don't want to take up all of your Friday evening. So yeah, it's to become a better teacher. I'd say a better qualified teacher as well. The Delta qualification, as you're going to see in a second, is let's call it the most important and most widely recognized teacher training course in the world at the moment. It's yeah, the best known advanced English language teaching qualification in the world. The idea is to extend your knowledge of understanding of principles and practice of English language teaching. It will really help you critically examine what you believe about English language teaching at the moment, um, and extend your knowledge of it in different contexts. And like I've already said, develop your career. Vicky's Rosario told me that I need at least 2 years of experience teacher. Yeah, ideally 2 years of teaching experience before starting module one. That's what Cambridge say. I'm not going to go against Cambridge's word, but I would say that it's not impossible to do it with less than that. But you'll see why that kind of thing is important. Okay, so let's move on. Some of you may have heard of this gentleman, actually from the Anglo in Uruguay. I'm going to horribly mispronounce his name, Gerardo Valasa. You know him, right? Okay, so he has said, this is actually on the Cambridge website, that Delta helps you become aware of your strengths and weaknesses. Great, Natalia. I think that Delta has been the most inspiring teaching qualification I've taken, and it's been the one that has opened more doors. And I can definitely say that's the same for me as well. Okay, good. So, what is Delta? Now, this is really important, this part, guys. This was a press release about the Cambridge Delta back in 2014. I'm going to read it to you. I know you can read it, but I'm going to read it to you. So, Ofqual, which is the exams regulator in the UK, back in 2014, confirmed that the Cambridge Delta is at the same level as a master's degree in the European Union. So it's been placed at level 7 of the UK government's qualification and credit framework, which is the highest level in the government's qualification and credit framework. And it's the only English language teaching diploma currently included at this level. Which is a very important point about the Delta. It's considered on the same level as a master's degree, and it all starts with module 1. So, what does Delta 1 mean to me? Well, I'm going to show you a. Now, this is more of a personal thing than anything else. These are, in fact, Juan. I wonder if you're in this picture somewhere. I'm not quite sure. Maybe you are. This was the class back in 22. Yeah, I thought you were. I think you're sitting next to Andrea there, aren't you? Yeah. I can think I can see Gaston somewhere in the background. This is the 2016 course, us working away in IH Montevideo. These were my candidates from last year. That we had 5 candidates from last year, and I am delighted to say that all 5 candidates from IH Montevideo passed their Delta 1 exam last year. It was a lot of work, but they all did it. And these were 2 of the candidates from the 2016 course who passed. Why is this important to me? Well, I can honestly tell you that there is nothing quite like the feeling of satisfaction when you get your certificate from Cambridge after a year's hard work and you've passed the Delta 1 exam. It's intense, and it's a great feeling of achievement once you've done it. By the way, guys, I know I'm talking a lot right now, and I know that's part of the idea of it, but as I keep talking, if you've got any questions, comments, whatever, feel very free to just put them in the chat box as we go through. Okay. All right. So look, I want to talk a tiny bit about the course itself. This was the early days of the 2017 course. This one, and I want to just mention briefly how the course is divided up. This is gonna look like a load of information from the start, but it's actually much more simple than it looked. All right, so this is your timetable for the year: April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and November. Now, in the information that hopefully all of you have, actually, I'm going to ask you a question. Vicky, I know Rosario talked to you about the course. Did she give you, or did I give you any written information about the course, about the course content or anything like that, or do you not have that yet? Nope. Okay. All right. Well, in that case, what I'm going to ask you to do, Vicky, is while we're talking, could you put, if you don't mind, if you put your um, email in the chat box, that would be great, so that I can make sure that I can get that information to you. In the meantime, I'm going to try and find my drawing tool so I can draw on this to point a couple of things out to you about the content. Great. All right. Wait, Vicky is in my student Vicky from back in 2014, who oh my God, who I taught first certificate to. Fantastic. And you're now, and that's right, because you did the Cert TESOL or the Liti course, didn't you, with with Rosario? Yes, I did, Alistair. Great. Good. Well, look, this will be perfect in that case. Let me just try and see if my pen's going to work. Yes, it is. All right, so look, April, Unit 1. The whole point of Unit 1 is background, first language acquisition and second language acquisition theories, and methods and approaches. This is just like, um, to start with, it's like a background of how we learn first languages and how we start to learn second languages, and approaches and methodologies like the background to all of that. And how it is that we started with second language teaching in general in the world. When May we move on to the receptive and productive skills, so listening and speaking, and specifically, obviously, how that relates to in-class teaching, but all like with all of the modules, or all I shouldn't say the modules, sorry, with all of the units, how that relates to the Delta One exam, and you'll see what I mean by that in a few minutes. You'll also see that underneath all of the unit content, I've put that you've got the how that connects to different papers, because there's two papers to the Delta One, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So that's May. In June, we're moving on to discourse. That's one of my favorite topics. I was lecturing on that at university here in Buenos Aires last year, and also testing and assessment. Then Unit 7 in July. July is always a bit of a crazy month because we've got one of the issues with Uruguay and Argentina, one of the many issues that we've got the sort of holiday clash thing going on. I believe that your holidays are slightly earlier than the ones over here. We've got them like in the second, no, is it the first 2 weeks of July? No, the second 2 weeks of July. And I think you have them at the beginning of July. But we're trying to get the dates for that sorted out at the moment. That'll be about vocabulary. Then we've got in August, grammar and phonology 1. It's quite a big topic, phonology. In September, phonology 2. October, we're going to have the course wrap up and revision. Oh, sorry, I should have said this is very important. Whoops, it'd be even better if I could underline it properly. The first mock exam. We're going to have two mock exams. A course that I was doing with Juan in 2016, we had one, and that I didn't think it was really enough. I think it's good that you guys can see how you are, how you're developing, obviously, as the course goes on. So there'll be one in September and then one in November, so that hopefully you can see how much you've developed or evolved in terms of your exam technique since then. Speaking of exam technique, so much of Delta is about exactly that. It's not just about the course content, obviously, which is intense, but there's also about how you answer the questions, and specifically timing, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Anyway, blah blah blah. After the first mock exam, we're going to be talking about exam registration. That's sort of the time when we decide which candidates to register, depending on how the first mock exam goes. And it doesn't mean you have to pass the first mock exam. In an ideal world, yes, but it's not the end of the world if you don't. It's about how close we're getting you at that point. And we really need to sort that out at the beginning of October, the registration. then the second mock exam in November, and the actual written exam, the Delta 1 written exam, is always the first Wednesday in December, the big day itself. Okay, so moving on. This is a very, very brief overview of what's in the exam. I say it's brief because this doesn't really tell you an awful lot. It tells you that there are 5 parts to paper 1 and there are 5 parts to paper 2. Papers are an hour and a half long, and it's a question of quite intense exam training to make sure that you can get all the knowledge that's in your head over the last 6 months or so onto paper in a specific way. Okay, so as you'll see in the course of this little chat, and when we start the course as well, tasks 1 and 2, it could be anything from the whole syllabus, which, as you've seen, is quite wide ranging, and task 3 is about language subskills and features of discourse. Task 4, language, discourse, genre analysis in learners' production. Task 5, language, discourse, genre analysis in authentic material. By the way, what do you think I mean by authentic material here? Or what do you think Cambridge means by authentic material? Real ones. Yeah, okay. What do you mean by real ones? I mean, I agree, but what do you mean by that? Silence. Poor Juan is having to, I was going to say, answer everything himself. Material that isn't graded. Yes, I would almost 100% agree with that. Real student stuff. Right. Actually, Juan, that would be task 4 about learners' production. I see exactly what you mean, and you'll see why it's not quite that in a few minutes. Yeah, Vicky, you're almost spot on with that. Not graded and specifically not written for ELT purposes. That's key as well. But we'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. Paper 2 is concepts of assessment for a specific context. So how we test our students. Task number 2, ELT materials and assumptions about language learning. What do you think I mean by ELT materials? I know that sounds like a really, really obvious question. What in general, not quite exams. In fact, exams, Natalia, would come under task 1. But what materials do we use every day with our students in the classroom? Sometimes we love them and sometimes we hate them. Right, let's see. Vicky, materials made specifically for language learning. Yes. Juan, lesson plans, practice book. Yeah, and specifically what Cambridge are meaning with that are course books. 99 times out of 100, it will be course book material that you've got to evaluate. Okay, task 3, issues related to language learning and teaching approaches. Right, that doesn't seem to mean anything at the moment, but it will become clearer a bit later, because in a minute, I'm going to show you an actual Delta 1 exam, which is going to be very exciting. Right, let's move on. So look, briefly wanted to mention course delivery to you. So in terms of the tuition, there will be face-to-face sessions once a month, and there will be these sessions on Adobe Connect once a month as well. So it's twice monthly. Plus, you're going to get Skype tutorials as well. What does that mean? The idea is like once every couple of months or something to speak to you guys one-to-one on Skype to see how it's going, see how you're feeling about the course, see how you're feeling about the homework, which I'll tell you about in a minute, and the exam practice, etc. Because what I discovered in 2016 was that it would be better to give people, apart from group work, like individual attention too. So Natalia, face-to-face is only twice a month. In fact, the face-to-face session is once a month. And then for example, right, I'll just give you this just for argument's sake. Let's say the first weekend of the month, it will be on a Saturday. I'm going to come over to Montevideo for a face-to-face session. And then the next session would be in 2 weeks' time, again on a Saturday, but it will be on this platform, on the Adobe Connect platform. And then apart from that, there would be the Skype tutorials. The reason for that is that because it's an extensive course. We've got April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. So actually like 8 months of the course. So having face-to-face sessions like twice a month or more than that isn't really necessary. So it'll be one face-to-face session a month and one session like this in this, I'm going to call it an online classroom every month. All right. Now, that's tuition. Resources, I've put Google Drive here, which sounds a bit mysterious at the moment. Apart from the reading list that you'll get as well, which is about as extensive as the course is, you'll also have access to Google Drive. Okay, what does that mean, Alastair? What is Google Drive? I'm going to show you what that is. Right, this is it. This is a picture of it. Juan has seen this before, but it has evolved greatly since 2016. Good, Natalia. It's good that you do, because you will find it. This Google Drive is going to be your default resource for the course. You'll get access to this. As you can see, what I've done is I've divided it into different topics for the course. So, for example, the units, approaches and methods, resources, skills, systems, testing and assessment. That's one thing. Obviously, that's to do with the course content. Apart from that, we've got general introduction material here, language acquisition and terminology. I've also included these two folders. They are all the past papers since 2008 and some specific study and exam practice exercises. And there is also online access to other online material from other websites as well. And there's a course wrap-up folder, which is like a revision of the entire course, but that we won't really need to look at until October type of time. So, for example, once you're in this Google Drive, let's imagine that you want to look at the approaches and methods folder. You would click on that and you would get into this. And it's divided into 3 folders: class material, exam practice. So that is how the, what am I trying to say? How the content of this unit specifically relates to the Delta 1 exam, and the homework that I'm going to get you to do as well. You're going to have, obviously, homework between every unit, which is going to be consolidating the course content, like what we see in class, in this case about approaches and methods, and exam practice too. So let's imagine you click on the class material folder. What you will then see down here, that looks a bit confusing actually. I'm going to put a little border around that so it's clearer. What you then see are, the handouts for the class, the methods and approaches reading. By the way, speaking of the reading, all the books that you need for Delta are in the drive. There are PDFs of all the books in there. Do with that information what you will. You are very free to get the books from wherever, but just so that you know, PDFs of all the books you need are in the drive. Okay. There are these things, which are the handouts for the class that you'll find in there, and this as well. This is a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation for the class that we have. You'll get access to those unit by unit as we go through. So my point is, all the material that you'll need for the whole course in its different forms is in that Google Drive, which is going to be your Bible, let's say, until the exam in December. And I was going to show you, which seems a bit of a weird thing to do, I was going to show you what the Adobe Connect Classroom looked like, which is something that I normally do in the face-to-face, the first face-to-face session, but considering we're in an Adobe Connect classroom anyway, that seems like a bit of a waste of time. But in any case, this is how it works. Embarrassingly, I think I'm wearing the same shirt as I was there in that picture. So there is a reading list for the course that I will make sure that you've all got if you don't already. Juan and Natalia, I know that you do. Vicky, I'll make sure that you get it as well. Right, just to finish, I want to look at the exam very briefly. Not the front page of it, but what is in each part of the exam, so it's not a massive surprise to you. I don't know whether this session so far is either terrifying you or making you feel more comfortable about it or whatever, but the idea of it is to I know I'm giving you a lot of information in a short space of time, but so that you've got like a bird's eye view of the whole thing. So paper one, task one, this is what it looks like. I'm going to show you each part of the exam now. This is what it looks like. You've got a definition of a specific piece of ELT terminology, and you have to provide a term for each definition. And I tell you what, why don't I ask you guys if any of you here and now know the answer to any of those any of those definitions, any terms for those definitions, A, B, C, or D. If you do, great. If you don't worry about it. But that's what you'll have to do. So we've got A. Let's see, the verbal signals given by the listener to indicate interest, attention, and surprise. B. A test employing tasks that replicate real-life activity, e.g., role-playing, job interview, etc. C. Using the medium of English to teach a subject such as geography, natural science, or history. And D. A verb which does not take an object. I bet one of you at least knows D, a verb that doesn't take an object. Chen. Natalia's typing something. Juan is typing something. Intransitive. Good. Juan got there first. Or maybe Natalia's D is transitive. It's actually intransitive if it doesn't take an object. C, we call it skills at school. Yes, but it's got a very specific term in methods and approaches. C. Yes, Juan. CLIL. Exactly. It is CLIL. Yes. Good. And you get an extra point if you can tell me what CLIL stands for. Speaking as we were of acronyms earlier on. The most difficult thing about CLIL is remembering what CLIL stands for. Content language, yes. Go on. You got 3 more letters, Natalia. In. The word starts with in, but it's not in. Good, very good. Content and language integrated learning. That's exactly right. But yeah, it's Natalia. It's like what you were talking about, teaching, for example, anthropology, history, physics, maths, whatever. But it is with English as the medium of instruction. Okay, well look, that's basically that's task 1. Task 2, same thing but the other way around. This time you have a term like, for example, when or there, you've got, I know, like stative verb, see, and you have to provide a brief example or illustration and a definition specifically for all 4 of those terms. So compound words, genre, stative verb, proficiency test. As you can imagine, Cambridge have quite a specific way they want you to answer this question. And the key, as we'll see on the course, is short rather than long. Less is more with most parts, at least, of Delta 1. Natalia, I saw you were typing something. Please feel free to continue. All right. So, by the way, I'm going to keep saying this for the next 5 minutes, but as I go, please tell me if you've got questions or comments about what I'm saying. Okay, so task 3. This is a task that students have to do. Okay, here it is. Let's see, what have you got to do? It looks like the students got to write a report on what? On education in different parts of the world, and you've got to write about education in your country. And you've got to include these things. So, what your job as a candidate is to do this. Identify 3 key language features that learners at this level, and I think it's a B1 level, would need to use to write this report. And they give you a couple of examples here, like organization, lexis or vocabulary about education and development. And you need to think of 3 things that learners at that level would need to do in order to be able to write a report. Task 4. Now, this is what Juan was talking about earlier on. Excuse me. You get a piece of normally writing, but can be a transcript of a spoken production as well from a student. And the idea is that you have to judge it just like you do in class all the time, or if you're unlucky, when you're marking at home all the time. You have to think of 4 key strengths and weaknesses. The student had to write about a holiday you will never forget, and you've got to judge it on these 4 criteria here. Organization, accuracy of grammar, range and accuracy of lexis and cohesion. And I've just put in the bottom down there, this is just like I just cut a part of it out, but that's what it looks like on the next page of the exam, and that's how you have to judge it on those bases. Okay, and then in part 5, part 5 is the authentic material task. I tell you what, I'm going to put a highlight around this, a box around this now, and I want you to tell me, you don't have to read the whole thing, but I want you to tell me what type of piece of authentic material you think that is in the box. I know you've only got like a few lines of it, not the whole thing, but nonetheless, you should be able to tell me what type of authentic material that is, where that comes from. It's a very specific type of writing. Okay, Natalie put biography. And Juan was writing something, he stopped writing. Yeah, you could the same. Okay, fine. Yeah, it is a biography. You could also call it an obituary as well, given that George Orwell is sadly no longer with us. But it's the kind of biography that you would find in one of his books. And what you have to do as the candidate of a Delta 1 exam is the following. I'm going to highlight this as well. You have to comment on the form and meaning or use of, for example, the verbs in bold. And you've got like was born, wrote, had sent, have made. I've highlighted those verb forms in bold there. I'm going to involve you a bit in this now, you 3. What form of the verb, what forms of the verb are they all in? You've got was born, what form is that? And what form is wrote? What form, oh, Juan's already started, so is Natalia, great. So, was born is passive, that's right. We've got past simple with wrote. What about had sent? That's not past simple, what's that? Had sent is not present perfect. Have made is present perfect. Yes, Vicky, past perfect simple, had sent, good. Right. For an extra point, no, it's all right. For an extra point, how, for all of you, what is the form of the past perfect simple? How do you structure? How do you tell your students that you structure the past perfect simple? It's like what plus what plus what, for example. There's a specific reason I'm asking you this. It's not just to bother you at nearly 9 o'clock on a Friday night. Right, Juan, irregular and irregular past forms. Yeah, it's interesting that you put that because that is something that you would have to comment on in the exam. Right, Natalia, let's see. Person plus had plus verb in past participle. Vicky's put subject plus had plus past participle. Good. And plus had plus verb. Well, you put the same thing. Good. And or yeah, subject because it could be a person or a thing, I suppose. Good. By the way, that what you've just done is exactly the kind of thing you'll have to do in the exam. Basically, how you would show it on a board for your students. Then you need to comment on features of connected speech in the following extract. Now, this is where phonology comes in, but obviously that's where the phonology module comes into. All right, that was paper one finished. That was an hour and a half, all done, and then you will have half an hour break, and then you will do paper two. Now, paper two, as we were talking about before, is about testing. And you are given two things. You're given a test or an example of a test. Here it is. And you're also given a scenario. What do I mean by scenario? I mean that there is a specific person. In this case, their name is S. Strange name. Either S or N or something like that. S is in a very specific situation in a specific country, and S needs to study English for a specific reason. And S is also at a certain level. And then you have, along with the scenario, you've got a test, and you have to say, as it says down here, using your knowledge of relevant testing concepts, evaluate the effectiveness of these tasks for this learner in this situation. So then you'd have to look at the test and think, right, so S has got to write down, she's got to listen to sentences and write them down. And she's often required to answer the phone in English. So maybe for that reason, it will be a useful test for her. I'm obviously massively simplifying what you would have to do, but generally speaking, that's what you would have to do in this part of the exam. Then we've got part two, paper two, task two. As I said, this is all about course books. This is a typical page from a course book or a very small picture of one. And this connects to the methods and approaches part of the course, because you've got to look at 2 pages from a course book and talk about how that relates to the methods and approaches that you've studied. In fact, Juan, you wrote CLIL earlier on. Can you guys think of any other methods and approaches that you've studied during teacher training? CLIL is one of them. What else can you remember? If the answer is nothing, that's okay, obviously. Okay, Vicky, project-based learning, good. Juan, task-based learning, good. What else? What else? What else? TPR, good, 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 good. Well, I'm gonna pick out right. I'm gonna pick out TBL as 2 of you have mentioned it, task-based learning. You may well see in a course book that it's getting the students to start with a specific task in mind, like to create something like a map of their hometown or something like that, feeding in the language that they would need in order to negotiate that with a partner or in a small group, and then how that would be scaffolded to a final production task. What your job is to talk about 6 key assumptions about language learning that are evident in the exercises. Lexical approach, good. So the writers of this course book believe that task-based learning, sorry, it's a fly that's bothering me. Task-based learning is important for students because blah, 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 blah. By the way, I say blah, 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 but actually, like I was saying earlier on, everything's got to be written in bullet points, like short and sweet in Delta. At no point are you expected to write essays, even paragraphs, or in most cases, full sentences. It's got to be short and sweet, unlike me talking right now. All right, finally, you've got task 3. Task 3 is different again. What you are given here is not a course book, but you get something like a quote. Normally a quote from, like it says here, an article in an English language teaching journal or a methodology book or something like that. Many teachers believe that they should at all times reduce their own talking time and increase that of their students. Discuss. So you've got to do two things, A and B. What reasons are there for reducing teacher talking time and increasing student talking time? And say, how do learners benefit from teacher talking time in a lesson? But, like I say, you're not supposed to write paragraphs or even full sentences. It's just bullet points. For example, why might it be a good idea for the teacher to talk less in class? Can you think of any reasons here and now? Why might it be a good idea that for the students, why might it be more beneficial for the students if the teacher is not just doing what I'm doing, which is blah, 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 talking all the time? Many people actually believe that it's a good idea for teachers to talk a lot, to expose students to a model of language, but that could be a point for part B of the task. Right, so let's see. For learners to have time to produce language too, yeah, absolutely. So you're opening up the space for them to produce as well. Very good. What else? In any case, the funny thing about this task is it doesn't actually matter whether you agree or not. The fact is, even if you don't agree with this, you'd have to play devil's advocate and you'd have to think of reasons why. Okay, let's see. Juan, to provide speaking opportunities to students to make a foreign language. Yeah, I mean, all of you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's one of the reasons. By the way, you would have to come up with a lot of reasons in the actual exam. What do I mean by a lot of reasons? Each task has a specific amount of points to it. The more points, the more marks, I should say, generally speaking, the more you need to write. So you'd be thinking, because this is the end of the exam, and you'd be thinking, right, for learners to have more time to produce language, it's also useful for students, not for students to specifically focus on particular things that the teacher's talking about. You'd be writing all these bullet points down. Okay, so basically that is your module 1 exam. That's it. That is 2 papers, 1.5 hours each. And that's the exam itself. And of course the purpose of the course is obviously to prepare you for the exam and taking it and the exam technique that goes with that, but also, as you've seen from what I just showed you on the course timetable, such as it is at the moment, plus the Google Drive, there's all the content as well for the skills, the systems, language acquisition, methods and approaches, and assessment and testing. And so, this is what we've basically been looking at over the last 45 minutes or so. So what Delta is about for teaching professionals, what it means to me, and what it means to you. I'm going to ask you at this stage, like I have been anyway, but if you've got any questions at the moment, you've all got the contact details of International House Montevideo. Here they are again, just in case. What I've also put down here, just in case, is the specific link to the part of the International House website where it talks about the Delta as well. So, yeah, what I want to ask right now, before we all disappear and actually have a weekend, is if you've got any questions for me at the moment. If not, feel free to get in touch and ask, whenever, when you've had time to digest this a little bit. Okay, there's silence from the chat box. That suggests nothing at the moment. Okay. All right. Well, look. If you do, please go ahead. I'm not gonna turn off the platform yet. But like I say, all right. Well, look. As and when things come up, please let me know. Even if it's to say this sounds terrifying. How is it possible? But in the meantime, this is just the idea of this has just been to give you like an overall view of the course and the exam and why it's useful as well. So, hope to see you guys soon. Like I say, do let me know if you've got any questions in the meantime. So, I will say bye bye for now, and have a very good weekend, and hope to speak to you soon. Okay, thank you.